Hi there, welcome to Games Over Qualia. My name is Devon. These videos work in 3 different parts. First, you send me your game and you fill out this form about your intended experience. Second, I'll play the game completely blind and then I explain what I think the game was trying to do. Third, I compare my blind experience with your intended experience and we'll see if they align or if they don't. Okay, so this game is called Cyber Volley by Helix Star. You're playing as this girl named Sona. She has the dream of becoming a Cyber Volley star, I believe. Cyber Volley is like a new type of game that exists in the future. It's some type of single player type of game. There's like some action elements to it and there's some puzzle elements. It's basically single screen puzzles like these, and it's just separated by, I think each level has around 6 segments. And then once you complete that level, then you get a grade rating for how well you did. And that's the game. You just keep doing those levels over and over. This is what was weird to me, was the game is a tournament type of game. It seems like it, right? You're entering a Cyber Volley tournament. Qualifiers, I guess is what it is. I never felt any pressure to continue forward to, really do the tournament to qualify. I didn't feel like I needed to get the best grade. The gameplay itself is fine. It's fun. It's interesting and it's not convoluted. It's very easily communicated. Good game juice. It's quite polished. I think I like the interaction a lot. There's nothing bad with that at all. The only thing that I was weirded out by was I didn't feel pressured to move forward. So what do I mean by pressure and why didn't I feel that? The more that I looked at this, the more that I analyzed it, the more I was understanding there's no lose state. You can see actually right here, right now, my score is C. My score is 55, but I have a C grade. You start with a C grade. You start with a score of 0, and that's C. Now let me explain a little bit about how the points work. So when you play this game, your ball that you're hitting above the air, you're trying to make it so that it doesn't touch any of these hazards, but at the same time you have to make the ball hit certain objects. So in this level, for example, I have to hit that bug, I have to squash that bug with it, and I also have to collect that blue orb at the very top there. I can't hit the red ground. If I do hit the red ground, I lose 10 points. The ball's HP goes down. You can only get to, I think, 3 hits. And then if your ball disappears, if you use up all your 3 hits, and you minus 50 points. But if you do that when you have 0 points, it doesn't go down more from 0. So the lowest possible score you can get is 0, which means the lowest possible rating you can have is a C. And that was strange to me. There's no way to lose this game. I guess the only way to lose is to give up, right? It's to pause the game and then quit. But there's no formalized losing state, right? There's no part that the game says, oh no, you lost, try again. There's nothing like that. It's all voluntary. And I thought that was very strange for a game that is about a tournament or a qualifier. You're in this big sports center, and the whole idea is that you're going to be a sports star. You have some sort of objective measurement that you as a person are trying to become. You're trying to be better. You're trying to be really good. And that never was here. You get a grade rating and then you can retry if you want to. And that's it. And I'm like, well, why is that happening here? And then beyond that, there was something even weirder, and that was, it feels like this whole game is like a personification of a participation trophy. And what I mean by that is when you are talking to the characters themselves, this is a strange connection that I'm making, but this is the way that I felt. When I'm talking to each of these characters, it's kind of odd because there's no propulsion by the characters. And if you know what I mean by propulsion, what I mean is like narrative propulsion. So when you talk to a character, they just say stuff to you, and that's fine. I'm okay with, characters not propelling the story forward. But what's happening is that when your character is talking to your friend, you have a friend character, and like I said, a spoiled brat kind of character. You talk to your friend, and what the friend does is she gives you advice, and that's all she does. She doesn't talk to you as a person, doesn't really make comments. She does every now and then. It's very, very small, though. Most of what she's saying is just advice, and what I think this is kind of like the way that kids would look at someone and say that they're a friend, right? A person who does nothing but gives you good advice. And what's weird about that is that in this game, they actually have a character who's specifically meant to give you advice, and that's the tutorial robot. And they are a tutorial character. They exist for that purpose. This other person, though, is supposed to be your friend, and so I feel like, what's going on with the identity there? The second thing is this rich, spoiled girl who insults you every time that you talk to her. Your character doesn't respond in a way that most people would. She doesn't respond emotionally. She kind of responds and taking the moral high ground, which is great, and I love that. I love that she does that. I feel like I'm a person who does that too. Whenever I talk to someone and I have an adversarial tone from that person, I try to de-escalate. However, I notice that when stories are being told, when you have emotional stories and you have to propel the story forward with some sort of conflict, that conflict usually comes between characters. The issue comes up in my mind, the feeling of this weirdness is again this kind of participation trophy ethereal nature of the game that I feel like is happening here. It doesn't matter what you do in the game, everything is fine. That's what it feels like. If it doesn't feel like the game's world is pushing any buttons whatsoever. It feels like everything is perfectly fine and all we're going to do is sit here and relax, which again is great. But the framing of this is very strange since you're inside of a tournament. You cannot lose the game. You can retry levels up to your heart's content. You start off with a C grade and you can't get anything lower than a C grade. The friend character is not really your friend. This insulting character doesn't really do any harm to you. It feels like everything is just kind of here. And that's what was weird about the sob story in the beginning for me. The way that it begins is she has the dream of becoming a cyber volley star, but her mother is sick and her father has died. So she needs to stay home and take care of her mom. She has this dream that has kind of gone out the window. She gets a cereal box prize, and this ticket allows her to be a part of this sports center. And she says, hey, finally I can live my dream. And she goes to it. The little thing that I didn't really understand is she's going to live her dream, but who's taking care of her sick mother at this time? I'm not sure. Like I said, in the very beginning, it felt like we were having on this kind of sob story that I felt like was going to do something with my gameplay, but it never seemed to come into play. Sona losing her father and taking care of her mother, it doesn't add any useful context to the situation. It feels like a bunch of this stuff is just kind of icing that's there for, your base layer of cake, which is in this case, action puzzle kind of environment. And that's what was weird to me, was that, again, I felt like I was only doing these things as a participation person. The way that I felt was that this game was a child's game, like a kid's game. I want to make a comparison to Kirby's Epic Yarn. I know when I played Kirby's Epic Yarn for the first time, I was expecting a Kirby game. And if you've ever played Kirby games, they're very skill heavy. They're not super skill heavy. They're pretty forgiving. They're more forgiving than like Mario or something like that. But you can still die. But when you play Kirby's Epic Yarn, it's made specifically for children. It's made specifically for people who just want to experience just what's happening in the world and not necessarily be given a skill, right? Whenever kids play games, for example, my nephew, he loves playing Super Mario Bros. Just loves it. But he'll use like the assist mode in Super Mario Wonder, which is great because what that does is it allows you to play the game without having any setbacks, right? Because all he wants to do is immerse himself in this world. Same when he plays Super Mario Bros. On the NES, on the Switch 2 version. When you play that game, there's that rewind feature, right? And so what he does is every time that he dies, he just rewinds a little bit and then, does something different. Basically what people would call save scumming today. And it's interesting because it provides a completely different type of experience. And that's what children's games usually do, is they're not trying to be a skill game. And that's what I thought this game was trying to be at the very end after I analyzed everything. But like I said, Sona, your character, is trying to qualify as a sports star. Like this is a pretty hardcore thing, in the fact that she has a family that she needs to provide for, and thus she can't become a sports star because of that. I feel like that's kind of, pushing us toward that skill heavy kind of deals, that kind of gameplay. So that was a little strange to me. If you're new here, I ask the developer 3 questions when they submit a game, and I play their game before I read their answers, and I'm now going to read them. My first question was, what were you hoping that the player would feel while playing your game? And their answer was, I wanted the player to feel engaged with the character and the ball's movement. I wanted the players to feel rewarded, both by their reflexes and their strategy in positioning the ball. Also, I wanted to make characters with a lot of personality in the game's world. The second question I asked was, why did you choose this experience as opposed to something else? Their answer was, this is my first solo project. Programming is not my expertise, so I came up with a platforming mechanic twist that I'd never seen before and that I could apply with my coding skills. Just make a character controller, a ball with a rigid body, and put a trigger on the player's head that adds force to that rigid body. It was made as a technical study. Also, I love platformers, and I like to work with non-conventional mechanics. Also, I wanted to make a non-intrusive optional plot points through dialogue. And my last question was, were there specific moments, mechanics, or ideas that you built around that emotional goal? And their answer was, I made the controls as simple as I could, since no extra buttons are required for regular bumps on the ball. I tried to create lighthearted character dialogue. I also show a difficult part of the protagonist's life so as to inspire the players to move on despite life's challenges. I created obstacles that are easily understood so people spend more mental energy on positioning the ball correctly instead of figuring out, quote unquote, the puzzle. The same thing happens, I think, with a lot of these answers. And I think what happens a lot is when someone makes a game, they think of these answers as a post-hoc thing. They think of the thing that they made, and then they try to understand what it is from the player's perspective after they have played it. But what I'm looking for is more of your, like whenever I talk about your intent, when I ask, why did you make this game? You know, why this experience and not something else? This is game design philosophy. And what that is the experience that you want to share with other players, right? That is the game design philosophy. Like if you think about why you say certain things in games and not other things, right? And this is the reason why I asked that question, why this experience and not a different one? You know, for example, for this game, why would you have, you know, a Cyber Volley tournament and not like a Pong type of look game? Why have characters in this game at all instead of like just moving dots, right? Why add all this other stuff? And when I ask that question, what it's meant to evoke is like this kind of deeper kind of thought process where you're thinking, what was it I was thinking when I added those elements? This is something that I had a very hard time with when I first started doing filmmaking. As I've talked about this before, but I had a photo class in film school. We were meant to go take photos of something that inspired us. And something that I did in that photo class was I took a picture of a garbage can, and I figured I was going to use that object as my inspiration. And so I took some pretty bad pictures of the garbage can, and I kept moving closer to the can to try to I don't know, just inspire myself. And I eventually got to the chain, to where the chain connected the garbage can to like this pole in the park. And I got some really cool macro shots of the chain. I thought it was really, really interesting. And I shared that with the class and when we were doing our presentation. And one of the things that my teacher had said, he pulled up the pictures, and the first picture is just this ugly shot, this wide shot of a garbage can in the middle of a park, and it just looks really bad. He usually has some sort of comment. As soon as he brought it up, it was silent. He was like, huh. And then he moved on to a next one. He went, huh. And then he was about to ask me why I took those pictures until he got to the pictures of the chain, and then he started seeing my intent. And he said, oh, these macro shots look really good, right? And then we started talking about macro photography. But he went back to those first pictures and he said, so why'd you take these? And I was like, ooh, immediately blank mind, right? I had no idea why I had taken those pictures. I was embarrassed. I didn't want to tell him. I don't know why I didn't take them. If I think about why I took them, if I went back to the actual point of me pressing the photo, I think what was happening was I was trying to log the object in my mind, and I was saying, this is a garbage can, and I'm going to go in from the wide to the very narrow. And then once I get to the narrow, then I'll unlock my potential. That was the type of stuff that I'm talking about here. That's what philosophy is when it comes to a directed philosophy. Like when we're talking about design philosophy, that's what that is. And to this person's credit, they did actually say that this is their first solo project, and basically what they were trying to do is just create a game that did not use a whole bunch of other things other than just their own programming skills that they had, which were very limited. And so they used this idea of moving a rigid body on top of their character controller. So there is, there's an intent there, which is great. However, I don't feel like there's a whole lot of intent on the player's side of things. Like this person didn't make this game for players. It feels like they made this game for themselves, which is great. I think that's actually what most art, is to do anyway, is that you make a game for yourself so that, you want to feel something, you want to see something that you haven't seen, out in the open somewhere else. And so you just make the game because you like it, and then you give it to other people saying, hey, do you like this game too? That's great. On the game design side of things, on the communication sides of things, this is where things get a little weird, because if people don't, get what that intent is, then they're not going to have that same experience. There's not a whole lot of intent with what they were doing other than just creating the game that was just using their light programming language, and that's fine. But I think that speaks a lot to what my experience was, because there's no lose state, because there's no way to fail the game, right? There's no way to push the player forward. It does feel like what it is, which is just a collection of a lot of different mechanics that are just here. That he just wanted to create the mechanics and the levels, and well, he did that. Congratulations on making a game, and I think that's really cool that you were able to make something that looks so polished, absolutely, and that plays really, really well. As for what it means to the player, for me, it definitely feels like the thematic end of a tech demo, right? A tech demo is there just to kind of create something that just feels like a mechanic. But when you take that mechanic and that happens, in a vacuum that's only supposed to be itself, and then you wrap it in thematic stuff, like you put this person inside of a cyber volley, like why have that? Why even have the cyber volley kind of world? Why have a character named Sona? Why have the other characters that you're talking to? Why create this whole sob story behind her? Why is all this stuff in this game? If this intent was indeed just to create a game just because it was just your first game and that's it, why have all this other stuff? And I feel like what's happening here, like this is complete conjecture, but I feel like what's happening here is a person who's seen other games and then created a game because they also wanted to create a game, right? And in their mind, I'm thinking what they're thinking is they see a game as a set of mechanics that also has a theme above it, right? It's dressed up with aesthetics and it means something more, right? It has something more on top of it. But because this game, I don't feel like has that thematic end into the mechanics, into the actual gameplay, like you're not actually making the game for that reason, it's just not matching. It doesn't, at least it doesn't for me. It might for other people. You could say it's a relaxing take on like an action game. You could totally say that. It's the intent, right? It's the intent behind the design. It's the intent behind your will to do something. Oh, you said, there was a comment that said no time attack mode seems like a missed opportunity. I do wonder, yeah, that's interesting. I wonder why there isn't one, because there are different modes in here, but they're just mini games. They're again, and they have the same type of forgiving nature in them. Secret Weapon says the end reveals you took so long to win the competition, the creating time. Thank you guys for being here again. I will talk to all of y'all later. Peace out.